6 desperate pleas echoing into the void. 6 frantic attempts to save a precious child. 6 devastating failures that forever altered the course of a toddler's fate. Welcome to a heart-wrenching journey through a child protection system that received every conceivable warning yet catastrophically failed in its most fundamental duty. This is the haunting account of justice that didn't merely stumble, it refused to even try fulfilling its most basic obligation. When paramedics discovered 2-year-old Stevie Osborne unresponsive in December 2019, the horrifying truth gradually emerged from the shadows. This wasn't a tragic accident or twist of fate, it was the culmination of days of visible suffering witnessed by multiple adults. Yet astonishingly, not one person effectively intervened to rescue this helpless child from her torment. My devoted followers, cases like Stevie's are precisely why our community continues to expand with such purpose. Your support in sharing these devastating stories ensures these precious angels aren't relegated to forgotten statistics and helps us all recognize the warning signs we desperately need to identify. Please continue sharing your city in the comments section, it genuinely inspires me to persevere in this crucial work. If Stevie's heartbreaking story resonates with you, please consider liking this video, subscribing to True Crime Buff HQ, or becoming a channel sponsor to support our ongoing mission of raising awareness about these tragic cases. Your engagement makes it possible for us to continue bringing these important stories to light. Stevie Lynn Allison Osborne entered the world on April 28, 2017, in Kansas City, Missouri, born to Abigail and Gary Osborne. Her name honored beloved relatives who had passed away, her paternal grandfather and her mother's sister. As she grew, Stevie blossomed into a vivacious little girl with sparkling brown eyes and delicate strawberry blonde hair that framed her innocent face. Gary had graduated from Park Hill High School in 2013 and soon began a relationship with Abigail, who completed her education the following year. At just 18 years old, Gary moved into Abigail's family residence while she explored various career possibilities, eventually discovering her calling in healthcare as a nursing assistant. The couple married and established their own household before welcoming little Stevie into the world. Their seemingly idyllic family life shattered and Abigail unexpectedly filed for divorce merely 5 months after Stevie's birth. Gary was devastated, completely blindsided by this decision. During their separation period, Gary made a disturbing discovery. Abigail had been collecting child support payments for Stevie while they were still married and living together, all while Gary covered the entirety of their household expenses. The situation deteriorated further when Abigail abruptly demanded Gary leave their shared home, claiming she required the space exclusively for herself and Stevie. With limited alternatives, Gary reluctantly returned to his parents' residence. Though the divorce initially appeared amicable, complications arose when police officers approached Gary at his workplace, Motion Industries. There, officers served him with an emergency protection order. Abigail had fabricated alarming accusations that Gary had attempted to strangle her in 2015, allegations that would later prove tragically ironic given what awaited innocent Stevie. The divorce proceedings concluded swiftly, and eventually, the protective order was dismissed due to a complete lack of substantiating evidence. However, the damage was done. Gary was prohibited from seeing his beloved daughter for over 3 agonizing months, causing him to miss her first Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's Day celebrations. It wasn't until January 2018 that the court finally determined Abigail and Gary should share joint custody of Stevie, with Abigail maintaining primary residence. Gary would be permitted to see his daughter every other weekend with a weekly sleepover and would be burdened with an additional $700 monthly child support payment, money that would tragically never be utilized for Stevie's critical medical care when she needed it most desperately. Sometime in early 2019, Abigail reconnected with Joseph Chilson, who had recently relocated from Seoul, South Korea, and was a former classmate of both Abigail and her ex-husband. The couple quickly began cohabitating, fundamentally altering the dynamic of Stevie's fragile world. For Gary, his precious daughter represented a radiant light illuminating his darkest days, an inexhaustible wellspring of joy. His profound love for Stevie sustained him through difficult times, and he continuously sought opportunities to secure her future. Stevie had developed into a bright, cheerful 2-year-old whose infectious laughter could instantly transform any environment. Even at her tender age, Stevie demonstrated a remarkable passion and talent for singing that captivated everyone around her. She formed deep attachments to her stuffed animals, treating them as cherished companions. She particularly adored her blue and pink sloth from Five Below that she had personally selected during a shopping trip with her father. Her enthusiasm for Disney films was boundless, with Frozen holding a special place in her heart, Olaf and Anna being her absolute favorites. She also formed a special bond with her grandmother's cat Charlie, who had grown alongside her since he was a tiny kitten. Small moments revealed Stevie's playful personality. She would mischievously steal sips of her father's soda or cleverly eat the center portions of his Jimmy John sandwiches, bringing genuine smiles to everyone fortunate enough to be in her presence. On December 19, 2019, Gary bid farewell to his daughter Stevie, completely unaware this would be their final goodbye. 2 days later, while Abigail worked as a critical care nurse at St. Luke's Hospital, her boyfriend Joseph messaged her that Stevie was ill and vomiting profusely. When Abigail returned home around 2 a.m., she found Stevie visibly unwell as described. Joseph claimed Stevie had accidentally tripped over their dog and struck her head on the unforgiving tile flooring, resulting in a pronounced forehead bruise. Later that same day, Stevie attended a family Christmas celebration. The gathering was festive, relatives mingled enthusiastically, children played energetically, and holiday spirit permeated the atmosphere. Yet the normally vivacious and energetic Stevie appeared noticeably withdrawn and listless. Family members grew increasingly concerned about Stevie's deteriorating condition. Her great-grandmother, Carol Dixon, posted photographs of Stevie in pink pajamas sitting on Abigail's lap, with clearly visible bruising marring her forehead. The accompanying caption stated that Stevie was battling a stomach virus and consequently not enjoying the holiday festivities. Despite Abigail's professional credentials as an ICU nurse, she seemingly failed to recognize that vomiting following a head injury could indicate a potentially life-threatening condition like a concussion. Even without formal training in neurological assessment, such alarming symptoms should have prompted any mother, especially one with medical education, to seek immediate professional evaluation. Yet inexplicably, Abigail didn't consider this necessary for Stevie. Family members observed Stevie vomit repeatedly throughout the gathering and noted disturbing bruising patterns around her forehead and ears. Peculiarly, Joseph appeared singularly focused on changing Stevie's clothing, adamantly refusing to allow anyone else to touch her. Although at the time, this seemed to family members like attentive caregiving for his girlfriend's child, the sinister reality would soon emerge. On December 23, Abigail received a horrifying call while at work. Joseph reported that Stevie had fallen from her bed and was completely unresponsive. Instead of immediately contacting emergency services, as any reasonable caregiver would, he called Abigail first, wasting precious minutes that could have meant the difference between life and death. When police officers and paramedics finally arrived at the Wild Oak apartment complex on North Flintlock Road, they discovered Stevie's diminutive body covered in severe bruising and contusions that told a story of systematic abuse. She was rushed to Liberty Hospital in cardiac arrest. Meanwhile, Gary received the devastating news at his workplace. He immediately raced to the hospital, driving at breakneck speed, receiving increasingly horrifying updates from Abigail. "I don't know what's happening. I think she's dead." Arriving in a state of panic and desperation, Gary demanded to see his daughter. His verbal threats, motivated more by overwhelming fear than malice, prompted police to separate him for questioning. They eventually confirmed he posed no genuine danger. He was simply a father terrified for his child's life, experiencing every parent's worst nightmare unfolding in real time. Medical examinations revealed the horrifying extent of Stevie's injuries. She had been deprived of oxygen for at least 20 minutes, exhibited agonal breathing, suffered fractures to the parietal and occipital portions of her skull, displayed diffuse subdural hematoma with midline displacement, and showed significant abdominal abnormalities. The innocent child teetered on the precipice between life and death. The only remaining hope lay in immediate surgical intervention, so she was transferred with utmost urgency to Children's Mercy Hospital. The neurosurgeon delivered a devastating assessment to Gary and Abigail. Stevie's catastrophic injuries appeared deliberately inflicted rather than accidental, given their extreme severity in pattern. Due to the grave nature of her condition, hospital personnel filed immediate reports with Missouri's Department of Social Services Children's Division, triggering an investigation into the deeply disturbing circumstances surrounding her injuries. During questioning, Gary stated he hadn't noticed any bruises when he last saw his daughter, though family members at the Christmas celebration had expressed significant concerns about Stevie's concerning physical condition. The Children's Division interviewed Abigail, who admitted receiving text messages from her boyfriend regarding Stevie's deteriorating condition while at work. Despite her professional training as a critical care nurse, Abigail inexplicably failed to seek appropriate medical attention upon returning home. At the Christmas gathering, multiple family members had questioned Abigail about Stevie's bruises, persistent vomiting, and concerning lethargy, but Abigail dismissively characterized these serious symptoms as ordinary childhood ailments, nothing warranting professional medical evaluation. When investigators questioned why he repeatedly changed Stevie's clothing, Joseph claimed full responsibility for her condition, stating he had been caring for her after she supposedly hit her head. Joseph acknowledged noticing bruises on Stevie's forehead, ears, and neck following the Christmas celebration. Abigail reportedly confronted Joseph about these unexplained bruises, triggering a heated argument that escalated into physical violence. Joseph allegedly pulled Abigail's hair and forcefully threw her onto the bed while she was holding Stevie. Abigail apparently considered calling police, but ultimately they agreed Joseph would simply move out instead. Joseph also suggested, without evidence, that Stevie's paternal grandfather, Dennis Morris, might have caused bruises on her abdomen on December 19, though his motivation for this baseless accusation seemed transparently self-serving. Joseph claimed he had shown these suspicious bruises to Abigail, yet inexplicably, neither adult took them seriously enough to seek medical evaluation. When Stevie's vomiting persisted on December 23, Joseph again expressed concerns that Abigail allegedly dismissed without action, a catastrophic failure of parental responsibility with the gravest consequences. As Stevie fought valiantly for her life in the hospital, Gary visited her bedside, offering whispered reassurances and finding minimal comfort in believing she would never again have to return to Abigail's home, something Gary claimed Stevie had consistently expressed reluctance to do. While medical professionals prepared little Stevie for emergency surgery, one doctor pulled Gary aside and delivered the most devastating news imaginable. Stevie's brain had suffered such violent trauma that it no longer communicated with her body. Her pupils remained fixed and unresponsive to light stimulation, textbook indicators of irreversible brain death. Doctors would attempt one final desperate measure to save her shattered body. They described the brutal procedure awaiting the toddler, a craniotomy, where they would surgically remove a section of her skull to access her severely traumatized brain. 2-year-old Stevie faced a savage surgical intervention no child should ever endure. After she was taken into surgery, Gary and Abigail were later escorted into a somber room where the chaplain and surgeon awaited them with expressions that conveyed the worst possible news. They informed Gary bluntly that Stevie wouldn't be returning home. During the procedure, her tiny heart had suddenly failed. Hospital staff performed aggressive chest compressions and repeatedly shocked her lifeless body with defibrillator paddles in a frantic attempt to revive her. Their heroic efforts proved futile. Stevie Osborne was officially pronounced dead at 1:28 p.m. on December 23, 2019, just 2 days before Christmas. Gary stood paralyzed with incomprehensible horror while, according to his account, Abigail's face remained chillingly emotionless. She allegedly retrieved her phone, calling her mother with blood-freezing detachment, "You can tell everybody to go home. She's dead." The Christmas Eve autopsy revealed the nightmarish extent of Stevie's torture. Brutal contusions covered her forehead, scalp, lip, chest, abdomen, pelvis, hands, wrists, and legs. Her abdomen and bowels contained extensive hemorrhages, and blood had pooled in multiple locations between her skull and scalp. The official autopsy determination stated unequivocally that Stevie died as a result of savage blunt force trauma to the head. Numerous questions remained unanswered. What unspeakable horror had befallen innocent Stevie? What kind of monster would inflict such savagery? How else could one describe an individual capable of beating a defenseless 2-year-old child with such unbridled brutality? Joseph Chilson became the primary suspect in the police investigation. On December 28, 2019, family and friends gathered solemnly at Park Hill Baptist Church in Kansas City to memorialize Stevie. The service, funded through Gary's Workplace Trauma Assistance Program, included the presence of Platte County Sheriff's Office personnel to maintain order. Despite family objections, Gary permitted Abigail to attend, reasoning that if she were indeed innocent, Stevie's mother deserved to be present. While Gary managed the funeral arrangements, he delegated burial responsibilities to Abigail. In a final act of betrayal, Abigail conducted the burial without informing Gary or his family. They discovered Stevie had been laid to rest only 4 hours after her burial at Whitechapel Cemetery in Gladstone, Missouri. Stevie was interred in a pink casket beneath a bronze headstone featuring her image holding a kitten, a poignant final memorial to a life extinguished far too soon. The criminal investigation continued until January 6, 2021. Joseph, who had remained the principal suspect throughout the inquiry, had an arrest warrant issued for him. Upon learning this development, Joseph tragically took his own life at his father's residence. Police informed Gary they considered this an implicit admission of guilt, effectively concluding the case against Abigail, whose degree of involvement or culpability was never definitively established. However, Joseph left behind a posthumous note that added more questions than answers. His letter philosophically discussed mankind's social needs, his personal loneliness, and his beliefs regarding the afterlife. He requested a modest funeral with friends smoking in his memory. Most significantly, he explicitly stated he had never harmed Stevie, that her death had no connection to his decision to end his life, and that his suicide should not be construed as an admission of guilt. Gary brought Joseph's note to police investigators and vehemently insisted that Joseph was not the only individual responsible, if he was involved at all, for what happened to his daughter. The police maintained the perpetrator had been identified, declared the case closed, and refused to pursue further investigation, denying Gary the opportunity to obtain true justice for his daughter. Stevie's devastating death forced Gary to reevaluate his relationship with his ex-wife, recognizing numerous red flags he had previously overlooked. While he acknowledged having no concrete evidence that Abigail played a direct role in Stevie's death, he couldn't shake the persistent feeling that the complete truth remained buried. Another year passed during which Gary diligently attempted to have the investigation reopened. He eventually secured a meeting with the prosecutor, but the official's words ultimately destroyed Gary's remaining faith in the justice system. It is not illegal to be stupid. It is not illegal to be a bad mother, Clay County Prosecutor Robert Sanders callously stated to the murdered child's grieving father. A contingent of 4 armed police officers physically removed Gary from the prosecutor's office to prevent him from voicing further objections. However, this did not completely shield Abigail from consequences. An investigation launched by the Children's Division discovered there had been 6 separate calls to Child Protective Services from concerned relatives the night following the Christmas party, yet the mother, a professional nurse, had inexplicably neglected little Stevie's deteriorating health. Because of this investigation, Abigail was placed on the Child Abuse and Neglect Registry and faced potential revocation of her nursing license in Missouri. My dedicated viewers, if Stevie's heartbreaking story resonates with you, please consider liking, subscribing, or becoming a channel sponsor to support our ongoing mission of raising awareness about these tragic cases. The Stevie Osborne case concludes here, but ahead lies another equally shocking account of a young girl's death resulting from catastrophic systemic failure. It's profoundly unfortunate that the Stevie Osborne case generated minimal mainstream media attention despite the family's devastating loss and their relentless quest for answers and accountability. Their attempts to gain wider recognition and justice were largely unsuccessful, but the family preserves the memory of their precious angel Stevie. Gary and his mother Valerie created a touching memorial for her in her bedroom, surrounding it with her beloved stuffed animals, including her treasured sloths. Additionally, they crafted special teddy bears from the fabric of Stevie's clothing, tangible reminders of the child they lost. The boundless love and joy Stevie brought into their lives wasn't merely a fleeting moment but an enduring treasure that will forever remain in their hearts, providing strength to move forward despite unimaginable grief. Stevie's magnificent spirit, her radiant sunshine and unconditional love, lives on in their hearts, providing them courage to persevere. Gary Osborne currently maintains an active GoFundMe campaign with two primary objectives: to secure legal representation to continue seeking justice for his daughter and ensure all responsible parties face appropriate accountability, and to establish a permanent memorial honoring her memory. Rest in peace, little angel Stevie. This devastating account made significant impact within the community, resulting in two individuals receiving life sentences and the victims' relatives ultimately receiving collective compensation of $5 million. As one official pointedly stated, "There's absolutely nothing any of us can accomplish in our professional capacities, certainly in my position, to restore Kaylee to the people who cherished her. That's precisely why I emphasize this is fundamentally about justice and accountability, not any form of retribution." Tragically, these realizations came far too late for 3-year-old Kaylee, who will never experience the joy of growing older. Kaylee Slusher entered the world on May 3, 2010, born to mother Sarah Kruger and father Jason Slusher in Napa, California. Sarah Kruger had two significant male influences in her life, and the complex dynamics of her relationships with them would ultimately become the primary catalyst for the tragedy that unfolded in 2013. In summer 2005, when Sarah was merely 15 years old, she met a 17-year-old boy named Ryan Warner. They engaged in a brief relationship characterized by substance abuse until Ryan's departure at summer's end. The following year, when Sarah was 16, she encountered a young man named Jason Slusher in a dilapidated drug house. Both Sarah and Jason were actively abusing various illegal substances during this period. Their relationship progressed, and after approximately 1 year, Jason and Sarah moved into Jason's parents' residence. They remained there for several years before eventually establishing their own apartment. Substance abuse wasn't the couple's only significant challenge, both demonstrated violent temperaments. Their frequent arguments often escalated dangerously. During one explosive confrontation, Sarah struck Jason on the head with a wooden 2x4 board. In retaliation, Jason slammed Sarah's hand in a car door with devastating force. At the time of Kaylee's birth in May 2010, Jason was already incarcerated for the car door incident. When Jason secured his release, he resumed substance abuse while Sarah had quit when discovering her pregnancy with Kaylee. This fundamental disparity, Sarah maintaining sobriety while Jason continued using, exacerbated their already volatile relationship, leading to increasingly frequent confrontations. By 2012, they formally separated. Following the separation, Sarah and Kaylee relocated to a new 2-bedroom apartment within the same complex. Eventually, Jason temporarily moved back in with them, but by June 2013, he returned to prison. Despite this unstable environment during her first 3 years, Kaylee somehow remained a remarkably happy and healthy child. Kaylee developed into an exceptionally intelligent little girl who adored playing dress-up, singing enthusiastically, and dancing with abandonment. She eagerly watched Sophia the First and proclaimed pink and purple as her absolute favorite colors. Kaylee was a joyful, effervescent 3-year-old perpetually wearing a bright smile. People consistently commented that Sarah appeared to be an exemplary mother during this period. Kaylee enjoyed a separate nursery decorated with pink furniture featuring her beloved Disney princesses. They frequently took leisurely strolls through the courtyard of the Royal Garden Apartments, where Kaylee had developed numerous friendships. Sarah regularly brought Kaylee to visit both her family and Jason's relatives. Even when Kaylee experienced minor health concerns, Sarah immediately consulted medical professionals for proper guidance. Ryan Warner, a ghost from Sarah's past, reappeared in her life in 2011 when they began communicating via Facebook. Initially, their interaction remained exclusively online. However, when Jason returned to prison in August 2013, Sarah invited Ryan for an in-person visit. What began as a temporary stay quickly evolved. After spending just a few days with Sarah, Ryan decided to move in permanently. According to Sarah's account, when Ryan initially relocated, he assumed a stepfatherly role toward Kaylee. He actively engaged with her, assisted with toilet training, provided nourishment, and appeared genuinely affectionate toward the child. However, worrying signs appeared early. Ryan would force Kaylee to remain seated on the toilet for excessive periods of 15 to 20 minutes. When Sarah expressed concern about this practice, Ryan presented persuasive justifications that eventually convinced Sarah to accept his approach. Unfortunately, Ryan's arrival coincided with Sarah's relapse into addiction. The couple regularly consumed illicit substances in their bedroom while Kaylee remained isolated in her bedroom or the living room watching television. Beginning in early December 2013, Sarah's substance abuse escalated dramatically, becoming a daily ritual. Simultaneously, Sarah discovered Ryan had an outstanding arrest warrant. Consequently, he rarely ventured outside their apartment and routinely provided false identification information to authorities. Since Ryan seldom left their residence, Sarah managed most errands and typically left Kaylee in Ryan's unsupervised care. Alarming behavioral changes manifested in Kaylee. She began crying more frequently and developed an inexplicable fear of using the bathroom. The apartment's condition deteriorated significantly, mountains of disorganized clothing accumulated, and the kitchen overflowed with unwashed dishes. Ryan systematically isolated Kaylee from her grandparents, severing these crucial support connections. By January 2014, Kaylee's grandparents, Jason's parents, grew increasingly worried about their granddaughter's well-being, having not seen her since Thanksgiving. Every attempt to visit Kaylee was thwarted by Sarah's elaborate excuses, typically claiming the child was ill. Those few individuals still permitted limited access to Kaylee began noticing suspicious bruising patterns appearing on the child's body. Kaylee's appearance drastically changed. She became pale, chronically fatigued, frequently nauseated, and experienced recurrent vomiting episodes. On January 23, 2014, Robin, Kaylee's grandmother, appeared unannounced at the apartment and demanded to see her granddaughter. Once again, she was denied access because Sarah insisted Kaylee was sick. This time, Robin took decisive action and contacted the Napa Police Department, requesting an immediate welfare check on Kaylee's condition. She explicitly expressed concerns that Kaylee was under the care of a substance-dependent mother and potentially suffering mistreatment. She also informed officers that Ryan had an outstanding arrest warrant and might be armed. Later that day, a police officer visited the apartment but inexplicably determined the situation was unsafe for himself and his partner. Critically, he failed to request backup assistance or investigate the serious allegations of child abuse and neglect. That same day, Robin made numerous attempts to contact Child Protective Services to report her grave concerns about Kaylee's deteriorating condition, but was dismissively told nothing could be done and she needed to contact police instead, creating a bureaucratic cycle with the child caught in the middle. On January 27, just 4 days later, police responded to a noise complaint at Sarah's apartment around 9:40 p.m. Sarah answered the door and, before officers could speak, defensively shouted, "Is it illegal to argue?" The officers ultimately departed without further action, claiming they observed no evidence of domestic violence against Kaylee. On January 29, approximately 6 p.m., Robin, increasingly convinced Kaylee faced imminent danger, again called police requesting urgent intervention. 2 officers arrived at Sarah's apartment to assess the situation. Upon their arrival, Sarah attempted to physically prevent them from entering by blocking the doorway with her body. However, she eventually forced Kaylee to approach the door, and officers immediately noticed obvious facial bruising on the child, who appeared gaunt, visibly ill, malnourished, and profoundly distressed. Sarah fabricated explanations, claiming Kaylee had recently fallen from her bicycle and was suffering from influenza, accounting for her concerning appearance. Officers also briefly questioned Ryan, who provided the false name Ryan Howard. While police remained in the apartment, Kaylee vomited directly in front of them, a clear distress signal any reasonably attentive adult should recognize as requiring medical evaluation. Sarah hastily gathered the child, rushed to the bathroom, and demanded police leave immediately. Incomprehensibly, they complied without making any attempt to speak privately with Kaylee or conduct a thorough physical examination, the very purpose of the grandmother's desperate call. Following this police visit, investigators belatedly discovered that Ryan Howard was actually Ryan Warner with an active arrest warrant. Despite this revelation and their concerning observations inside the apartment, police made no effort to secure a warrant for re-entry or to apprehend the fugitive. On the day of this police visit, Sarah and Ryan had a friend visiting their residence. They consumed illicit substances together in the bedroom. At one point, Sarah briefly checked on Kaylee in the living room but discovered her in the bathroom drinking from a cup containing a hazardous mixture of Windex cleaning solution and tobacco residue. Sarah induced vomiting to expel the toxic substances. On February 1, a Saturday, Officer Chambers received another call to the same apartment complex. According to his statement, an anonymous informant indicated something serious had happened to the little girl. Chambers arrived at Kruger's apartment shortly after noon, knocked repeatedly on both door and windows, but received no response. Chambers and 2 additional officers eventually gained entry after obtaining a key from maintenance personnel. The apartment contained a noticeable smoky haze, as if someone had been smoking indoors with windows sealed, markedly different from conditions observed earlier that week. Chambers announced their presence but received no acknowledgement. He proceeded to the kitchen while his colleagues examined the bathroom and one bedroom. Chambers then approached a closed door that revealed itself to be a little girl's bedroom, complete with a pink princess bed and decorative streamers suspended beneath the ceiling. Initially mistaking the form on the bed for a doll, a horrifying realization gradually dawned: it was Kaylee, the same child he had encountered just 5 days earlier. Kaylee's pale, lifeless body lay tucked beneath 3 blankets, with the closest one, colored pink, partially revealing her tilted head and blonde hair. The areas surrounding her eyes and lips appeared darkened, and her face displayed visible bruising. Disney princesses smiled cheerfully from the bed's headboard, creating a macabre juxtaposition with the tragedy before him. The child appeared deceased for some time, but he verified by checking for a pulse and finding none. Her skin felt unnaturally cold, something that profoundly confused the experienced officer, who had never encountered a body temperature below ambient room temperature during his career. The apartment was dimly lit, filthy, and chaotically disorganized. All curtains remained drawn, and latex gloves were scattered across the floor. The kitchen appeared completely disheveled, and investigators noted the freezer had been emptied entirely, with a shelf unit removed, details that would later prove significant. Unsurprisingly, Sarah and Ryan were nowhere to be found. Most devastatingly, Kaylee had a 12-inch section of intestinal tissue that had necrotized, causing the intestinal wall to rupture completely. This catastrophic internal injury allowed intestinal contents to spill into her abdominal cavity, triggering overwhelming sepsis that ultimately claimed her life. The injuries covering Kaylee's body resulted from repeated, deliberate blunt force trauma consistent with systematic beating, not mere accidental slaps or falls from a bicycle as her mother had claimed. The autopsy revealed no evidence of any underlying conditions such as constipation, abdominal disease, or spontaneous rupture that could explain her injuries through natural causes. Investigators also noted Kaylee was significantly dehydrated and showed signs of malnutrition at the time of her death. Medical experts testified that Kaylee's death was excruciatingly slow and unbearably painful. Only emergency surgical intervention to remove the necrotic intestinal section could have saved her life, a procedure she was cruelly denied by those entrusted with her care. A Napa County jury found Sarah Kruger guilty of first-degree murder with the special circumstance of torture, as well as assault resulting in the death of a child under 8 years old. In a separate trial, a different Napa jury found her boyfriend Ryan Warner guilty of identical charges. On July 27, 2017, Napa County Superior Court Judge Francisca Tischer sentenced the couple to life imprisonment without possibility of parole, the maximum punishment available under California law. In January 2021, both Sarah and Ryan challenged their convictions and sentences, arguing insufficient evidence had been presented to prove they had intentionally killed Kaylee. The Court of Appeal ultimately reversed the jury's findings in both cases specifically regarding the special circumstance of torture. The central legal question hinged on whether the defendants had formed explicit intent to kill the victim during the torture period. The appellate court determined the evidence insufficient on this narrow legal point, controversially overturning the unanimous verdicts of two separate Napa juries. The court reasoned that the extensive bruising across Kaylee's body, including areas beyond her abdomen, indicated intent to inflict pain but not necessarily intent to kill. Furthermore, evidence that Kruger had given Kaylee water and popsicles was interpreted by the appellate court as indicating Kruger intended to treat her daughter rather than cause her death. Napa County District Attorney Allison Haley vehemently disagreed with the appellate court's reasoning. If not an intent to kill, then why beat your baby so severely that her intestine ruptures? If not an intent to kill, then why not call a doctor when your baby is screaming in pain, as evidenced by testimony from numerous neighbors? If not an intent to kill, then why not call an ambulance when you find her lifeless body on your floor? I fully support the unanimous verdicts of 24 Napa County jurors who demonstrated the courage and common sense to recognize abject cruelty for what it truly was. Consequently, in 2021, Kruger's and Warner's sentences were reduced to terms ranging from 25 years to life imprisonment. They subsequently attempted further sentence reductions by filing motions for resentencing under recent changes to California law. In July 2024, Napa County Superior Court Judge Francisca Tischer decisively rejected these requests, entering formal judgments denying resentencing for both Sarah Lynn Kruger, then 34, and Ryan Scott Warner, then 36, in separate hearings. Sarah Kruger currently serves her 25 years to life sentence at Central California Women's Facility in Chowchilla, while Ryan Warner serves an identical sentence at California Men's Colony in San Luis Obispo. In May 2015, Kaylee's father, Jason Slusher, and grandparents, Robin and Benny Slusher, filed a civil lawsuit against the city of Napa and Napa County in federal court. They alleged that the Napa Police Department and child welfare workers had catastrophically failed to properly investigate clear allegations that Kaylee had suffered abuse and neglect, despite numerous reports and visible evidence of her deteriorating condition. The lawsuit dragged through the legal system for 4 years before finally reaching settlement for $5 million. Kaylee's father received $2.5 million, while her grandparents received the remaining $2.5 million. Yet as the family poignantly observed, all the money in the world cannot restore little Kaylee's vibrant life. She remains another innocent child betrayed by her own mother for the destructive allure of substance addiction and attachment to a dangerous partner. Rest in peace, sweet angel Kaylee. I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to each of you who watched this video in its entirety. Your engagement means everything to our mission at True Crime Buff HQ. Please share your thoughts on these heartbreaking cases in the comments section below. I read every single one. If these stories have impacted you, please consider subscribing to our channel and hitting the notification bell to be alerted when we release new investigations. Your support through likes, shares, and channel memberships directly enables us to continue bringing these important stories to light, ensuring these innocent children are never forgotten. To our existing subscribers and channel members, your continued support is the foundation that makes this work possible. Each video we create aims to honor the memory of these precious lives lost and hopefully prevent similar tragedies by raising awareness of the warning signs we all need to recognize. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being part of our community dedicated to seeking justice and remembrance for the most vulnerable victims of unthinkable crimes.